Give credit where credit's due. Netflix, you got another good show on your hands. Romantic Killer honestly was a series that at face value, I wasn't sure I was gonna like. A very unique art style, very comical, but over time I realized this show has a lot of heart, and yes, deals with a lot of heavy subjects. A perfect balance between comedy, drama, and romance that really did have me wanting to watch each and every single episode, and ultimately, in the end, when it was done, kind of missed the characters. But this is my review of the 12-episode series that's now available on Netflix, so let's jump right into it. Romantic Killer opens up with a girl named Anzu, and it's really established that this girl, well, not a neat or shut-in, she just really enjoys three major things in her life: chocolate, video games, and her cat. She still goes to school, she still has friends, but most all activities outside of that, she kind of just focuses directly on her three major things. Well, while she's enjoying one of her new games, that doesn't turn out to be the game that she bought, a wizard comes to her screen and tells her that it's working for the government, trying to help, yes, the declining birth rates in Japan. And it's going to be using its magic to put her through a series of encounters with different handsome men in order to find romance for her. But not only that, in order to keep her focused on that, it's going to take away the three major things that she keeps getting distracted by: chocolate, video games, and her cat. And yes, Anzu is not happy about this, but what can she do when this thing has magic? And through all of her complaints and just outrage about this whole situation, she eventually comes to find out that a lot of things are being put into place to force her to have these romantic encounters. Yes, her father's work transferred him to America, despite the fact that he works for the post office. And her mother goes along with him. But additionally, as she kind of goes throughout her day, she keeps bumping into people, one specific one being Tsukasa. But she knows this is the work of the wizard, so she does everything she can to avoid any encounter with this guy. Yes, he's really hot, and yes, he doesn't seem like he's too much of a jerk, even though he's very off-putting to any other girl that wants to get with him. Anju's focused. I'm going to make it my goal to not fall in love just to get back at that wizard. All the while suffering because she doesn't have access to anything she cherishes so much. Yes, even the stores are out of stock of chocolate. She can't find her cat. She has to find picture books of cats. And while that's a setup, this idea that Anzu is trying to avoid love, this wizard's trying to push her into love, and yes, she keeps having these encounters with these handsome men, over time what you sort of see is these building relationships despite that intention. Despite Anzu doing everything she can to push away these guys, she ends up forming a bond with them and they form a bond with her. And surprisingly getting a lot of real character and drama beats out of these characters that she encounters. It's this idea of somebody who avoids contact with people because not that they're mean or not because they're a shut-in, but more of an idea because they don't want to get into romance. And yes, that they find value and enjoyment out of these things that don't particularly coexist. Again, shutting yourself up with chocolate and video games and a cat, and not necessarily wanting to go out and do things. So my thoughts on Romantic Killer. This is an absolute surprise for me. Coming into it, I wasn't too sure I was going to enjoy it. Yes, it has Ria Takahashi as Anzu, which really does make her character, and I really do love her voice, but it was a little off-putting to me, to be honest, because of how loud Anzu is, and they love overly animating her loudness. She has so much inner dialogue about her frustrations and everything that she's going through, and how she gets overly angry whenever she wants to do something, but then the wizard puts something to effect that pushes her on somebody again. And you see this with her getting overly animated and super goofy faces and everything, and I really wasn't sure I'd like it. Give credit where credit's due though. Dometica, the studio that worked on this, animated this very well, and it's got a unique art style to it, honestly. It's got a very lush look to the colors, and the characters really pop. And they do a great job of animating those over-exaggerations. But just when I thought that it was going to frustrate me, I quickly got used to it, and I found that there was a nugget within the show that I really did enjoy, which is the true human nature of the characters. And yes, the goofy shenanigans of how everything seemed to be put into place by this mage. Again, she bumps into Sakasa, breaks his phone, he's like, that's fine, you end up finding out later why that is, but then you see that this guy is a cold guy that pushes away girls that confess to him. But still, the two of them end up kind of having to live together, all due to the mage flooding his house. But Anzu goes out of her way to make herself look unattractive as possible, being very casual, wearing goofy outfits, being very frizzly with the hair, wearing glasses. But as some people would probably venture to guess, yes, there's that kind of element of how casual she is and how she's not trying to be like all the other girls that are really trying after Sakasa. He ends up being comfortable with her because she's technically being comfortable with him. But it's through their casual interactions that the two of them realize at some point that they kind of like being around each other. Yes, they want to stick to being friends, and Anzu's just perfectly fine with that, but does that eventually get to a point where it becomes romance is the big question mark, and it's obviously the thing that the wizard wants to happen. It's how all this plays out that was truly shocking to me, because it starts out as Anzu being this person that just wants their candy and hang out by herself, transitions to the more combative side of Anzu as she pushes away this concept that's put before her. The frustrations that she deals with trying to avoid things, but then something else gets placed in front of her. It's the circumstances I don't want to deal with kind of idea. But then slowly over time, it shifts. It shifts to making these characters that at face value seem like they're hot guys. They're Otome game characters, basically. Every introduction feels like an Otome game. Oh, here's the childhood friend, obviously. Wait, I don't have a childhood friend. Well, here's the handsome guy that I bump into outside the door. They're trope Otome game introductions, but how the story shifts into them being more than just those characters was the big shock for me. At some point, I realized, oh, these are actually humans. These aren't game characters. These are people that have insecurities, they have issues, they have drama behind them that they're trying to avoid. And like I said at the very beginning, it gets pretty darn heavy. Like a lot of these stories really get heavy. And not just the handsome men, even with characters like Saki, who is Anzu's friend. Getting into her story that felt very human, and yes, very upsetting, but at the same time, drama that I felt was so perfectly done. It wasn't melodramatic, it wasn't too much. It was enough, it was unsettling, it was heavy, and at the same time, it really made me love these characters in the end. Because Anzu, despite being a character who seems like she's pushing everything away for the sake of what she desires and wants to indulge in, at her core, you realize that she's not the sum of the value that you see in the first episode. She's casually a good person. And when she realized that things are going wrong, she's willing to step up, and it made me fall in love with her as a character. Yes. A multifaceted character that's not the sum of some sort of trope. She's willing to protect the things that she loves. She's willing to step up in the face of bullies. And she has such a pure, selfless heart that I cannot help but fall in love with. Anzu's a dork, but she's also a really good person. And yes, this transitioned to every single character in the show. Yes, a few of them were very less complicated. I don't expect all these characters to have some heavy backstory. But the point is that none of them are the sum of their first encounter. And how this series pulled that off, I love it for it. I think it's one of those ones where, yes, it's kind of that idea of somebody forcing somebody to like something they don't want to get into. But I think it's to the point of the idea of distracting yourself so much that you don't realize the importance of what's around you. Again, Anzu isn't a shut-in, but she is very distracted. But I think over time, what she's sort of realizing is that having people around her is a good thing. Being distracted from her distractions is a good thing. And the bonds that she's technically already formed are ones that are really cherishable. In the end, I highly recommend people checking out Romantic Killer. Yes, it's not a crazy awesome romance, but I think it's got enough in there to bite onto, which is typically what you'll get with a romantic comedy. The comedy's pretty on point. Just seeing Anzu freak out and just constantly struggle with this wizard is always a lot of fun. And yes, Saki's reply to the age-old question of cup size was absolutely priceless, and I won't spoil it here. I love this series so much. Again, like I said at the very beginning, I ultimately, in the end, I kind of miss these dorks. They're casual hanging out, and yes, Anzu herself, I absolutely fell in love with. And yes, somehow Netflix figured out how to sneak Kendra Suda into it, so that's always a good thing as well. But that's my review of Romantic Killer. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what thought of the series if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you like my content and you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link, a tips link, and a super thanks button down below. I greatly appreciate everybody that does, and y'all take care.